just want to start by thanking you, Sean, for taking the time to chat with us here at the Christian Beat, all about your upcoming project.
Of course. I'm excited to talk about it. I've been
Abs-
working on it for a couple years. It's good to just actually get on the other side of the creative process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask how long this project you've kind of been working on it, how the vision maybe has changed for you, because it sounds like you've been working on it for a little bit of time here. So,
It has been a few years. I'm okay with things taking the time they need to take.
Mhm.
So I don't have any qualms with that. But it's been 2 years. A lot has happened to me in 2 years. So that's sort of all in the ecosystem of the music. I mean, I'm a dad of two now, and so becoming a father has been remarkable. And there's kind of and it's just rocked my whole world. I thought I thought that I was a pretty patient person. Apparently not. So just learning how to be a dad, learn caring about wanting to be a good dad. Uh, Man, these are like earthy, real things that keep your feet on the ground, and I and keep your head out of the clouds. And so a lot of the music's about that. So I don't know. I just think 2 years. It's just enough time to to get it right, I suppose. Because we're done. We have finished it.
Ah, for sure. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the title and kind of the artwork and how those two things kind of come together and help encapsulate what you think this project means?
Sure. Yeah, okay. So the record is called Basic Faith,
Hmm.
which is also a title track.
Hmm.
And I chose it because I do feel like there's something about that phrase and something about that song that is a wide enough umbrella to encapsulate even all the minor themes throughout the record. But I'll say that I've reached a point some time ago, but I've just been thinking about it a lot the past couple years that I've been walking with the Lord for a lot longer than I haven't been at this point. Yeah, I'm 36. So we've got just God and I have all this history. And there's there's so many ways that my life has deepened in wisdom and hopefully a little maturity and spirit and truth. And this is what it means to walk with God, I think. But I've also recognized that there's quite a few ways that I've overcomplicated things, you know, and I've maybe tried to reach out and take back things and put them in my hands where they as if they are better in mine instead of the Lord's. And you don't realize you're doing that all the time. And so uh just the idea that maybe as we're growing up, sometimes we grow out of things that we shouldn't. Things like trust and wonder. And my hope is that and a lot of this project encapsulates this idea that faith, it isn't about knowing what's around every corner. It's about trusting the one who's leading us. And that idea of faith is one that grows and evolves and kind of takes a lifetime to really get right. Like basic faith in my mind wasn't, when I think about basic, it wasn't necessarily simple. I in my mind it was more akin to something like fundamental or foundational. And I mean it I think it is also really inspired by the Sermon on the Mount, these ideas that Jesus gives us that paints a picture for us for maybe what the kingdom of God is like. And really beautiful, really challenging. If I had it sorted out, I wouldn't be writing music to try and figure it all out. But and so that to me that ties into the artwork in a lot of maybe poetic ways. I enjoy the artwork because well, I think I'm just a little bit tired of it just being pictures of us. It's like, can we just I just want let's do anything other than that. Let's get something that makes you feel something, that maybe tells a bit of a story that has a few layers.
Mhm.
I use a lot of garden and nature imagery.
Mhm.
And so I I really am inspired by what that can teach us. And I've always loved that, particularly with trees. The root system is always 3 or 4 times wider and bigger than the canopy.
Mhm.
If that doesn't give you some pause and make you think about maybe the way we're actually wired and maybe what is important and what isn't, and things like optics. Optics are such an interesting thing these days, especially in the digital age.
Mhm.
But the heart of what's happening is usually something that is impossible to perceive. It's all underground. And so I wanted to capture some of that. um God wants to is more concerned with growing us rightly than he is growing us quickly. And that's kind of a hard urge for us to fight. But we need to grow well, and that usually means that the roots have to grow a lot deeper before you see anything on the surface. So I wanted to capture that, and then I also just the little girl on the cover is my daughter, and that just sort of worked out. We gave her this little pitcher, this kind of flower waterer pitcher, and told her to go water some flowers. And intuitively, she didn't do it the way that it was designed. She turned it on its side and just poured the whole thing out. And there's something so childlike and sweet about that seemed right. It's like, whoa, you know, this is the quickest way to get all this water out. I want this flower to have all of it here. And so it just came together. Uh, I, I've been learning a lot about childlikeness as opposed to childishness. My daughter has both of those things, but uh, yeah. So I'd say those are some thoughts about the cover and just the project in general. What is the intersection of God and life? And how do we find God in the fabric of our everyday? Because that's where we spend most of our time. Uh, it's probably important that we would encounter God there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always love getting to hear more about those layers and meaning that you had talked about, because sometimes it's more obvious and sometimes a little less obvious than others. So it's always
Yeah.
fun to see how those themes and messages interact. Um, yeah, but and you have already released the title track.
Yes. Just a
As
few weeks ago.
So can you talk a little bit about the reaction that you're seeing so far with that one and kind of
Sure.
how you're excited for that to, even tenfold when the whole project is out?
I was hoping that to me that song is is a deep song, and I was hoping that it would people would engage with it and encounter it in a way that is um transformational in the soul. And that's been the experience. So that's really cool. Like I kind of was hoping what it does for me is it helps narrate a big portion of my life that I don't feel like is talked about a ton in songs. And kind of like what I was saying earlier, I'm just in this point in my journey with the Lord where we have all this history, and I want ways to narrate it faithfully. And oftentimes I'm trying to reach for that and I'm not finding it. So it's like, well, I don't know, let's just write one. And we got to actually last week was the first time that I actually played it live. I got to lead it at a student event with my church, and
Mhm.
it was it was just really really important. I think for the night, just to be able to help speak about faith that way.
Mhm.
I think sometimes, and I'm not sure why, but sometimes faith gets conflated with things like certainty. Um, but in many ways, that they're opposites. Um, the idea of certainty can give us a false sense of security for a little while. Um, but it can really crack under the pressure of real life sometimes. But the more certainty you have, the less faith you need. Faith is about trust. It's about this enduring, overwhelming trust that we have in the provision of God. And it actually requires a lot of mystery and a lot of unknown. And there's a great many faith songs that don't necessarily help portray it that way. And I think this one does. And so that's been special to me. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And of the tracks that haven't released yet, I don't want to ask you your favorite because they're all on there for a
I know it's so
reason.
hard.
Right. But is there one that's speaking to you personally in your current season, kind of more so right now than some of the others?
Yeah, no, it is. I'm glad you prefaced it that way because it's so hard to pick
Yeah.
a
And
song,
favorite can change from day to day too.
Yes, and I think music is special like that.
Hmm.
They're supposed to help serve different moments, different seasons. So
Hmm.
I'll say, the one that I'm coming back to the most often right now is the last track on the record. It's called Let It Take the Time It Takes. And it it's not directly about this, but in many ways, it's a it's about me just sorting through the effects of losing my father. Over the course of a year, I became a dad and lost my dad. And there's just so much in that, you know. And I was having a hard time trying to figure out how to relate to God
Hmm.
in that season. Can God be found in this place of such pain and frustration and uncertainty and um, tension? This liminal space, it can be really disorienting. And so this song, in some ways, are, are at least some of my thoughts about and musings about what it means to walk through that space and how God is found in it.
Hmm.
And so it's just been a great comfort to me. And I think ultimately that song is is about something like companionship, um, which is quite a gift that God. This is God's desire for us, that He would be with us, um, and His presence is a guiding light and a massive source of comfort. So yes, the last track, I think it's a fitting track for to be last, and it's really poetic. It has a really comforting sort of nature to it, and I've just been listening to it a lot. So yeah, I'm excited for people to hear that one.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how the reaction is for that one. And we've talked about messaging and the lyrics and kind of the themes of this. Do you want to talk any bit about the actual sound, the music, and kind of how that brings together for you on this project too?
That was one of my most um enjoyable pieces of it. Well, I love music, but I just, it's music is a language that I felt comforted by as a kid, and so being able to kind of speak in that language is really comforting to me. But this is my first full length
Mhm,
project, and so with 12 songs, you have a lot of real estate to be able to explore some spaces, to be able to stretch some ideas sonically, and it was just a blast. I mean, it I guess I'm not sure how you would be interfacing with me because there is a good chunk of this project that will, if you know me as Sean, um, the worshiper, or the sort of quirky, introspective worshiper guy who wears a hat and plays electric guitar. Like, I think there's a lot of people who that's their first inclination about me.
mhm,
There is a good portion of this project that will feel familiar to you. But I'll say that because I have a lot to say and I get 12 songs to say it,
mhm,
you might be pleasantly surprised about some other gears because we turn some other gears and we toy with some other genres. Like I'm really interested in finding different ways to express dynamics or to express tone. Like I really don't like to think about songs in genres. I just want them to grow to what they're supposed to be. Like I usually think about it like I just want the clothes to fit, you know. And
mhm,
so that that was kind of the only filter I put on stuff. And so that pushed us into there's some songs that kind of float into more of the like indie pop, dream pop kind of space.
mhm.
There's some that are really broken down and acoustic. And it's just like we should go on a journey. So let's do it. We've got 12 songs. I don't want them all to sound the same.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. That's a
Yeah.
great point. I know we're getting close to time. I really have enjoyed getting to hear from you, but I do want to give you just one final opportunity just to share your prayer, your
Mm,
expectation for this project as listeners get to impact with it and interact with it.
of course. Yeah. Well, I'll say this. When I try to synthesize down what I feel like this project is, I usually say this sentence. Jesus came to do more than get us into heaven. He came to get heaven into us. And I think that it's taken me quite some time to care about that idea. And so my hope is that these songs help us live lives that actually are apprenticing under the Rabbi Jesus of Nazareth. I can say for myself that in many ways I've probably become a professional at encountering God in spectacular settings, and that, and I love those spaces, but it can come at a cost if that's the only way you know how to find God, because uh, he's what he's best at is guiding us through our everyday life. And if we forsake that call, we can get into a whole heap of trouble. And so a lot of these songs are that I want them, and my hope is that they would be companions for us in our everyday lives. How do we find God there? How do we find God there? What a gift it is. So I hope you're encouraged by it.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you again, Sean, for taking the time. I've really enjoyed getting to hear more of you and your heart in this stuff. So I'm really excited to have it out there for everybody else.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been great.